The episode opens with Barl looking back on his life after leaving the peaceful countryside and coming to the capital to work as a special instructor for the Night Order. For this middle-aged swordsman, this is truly an unexpected turn of fate. One moment he was living a quiet life in the countryside, and the next his former student had dragged him into the city and placed him in a position that sounded stressful just by name. In the Night Order training yard, where Barl is instructing the knights as usual, Hemblitz asked him to teach them how to respond when several enemies attack at the same time. This is a very practical battlefield situation because enemies are rarely polite enough to line up one by one and wait for their turn. Hearing this, Barl decides to demonstrate by fighting two opponents at once. Karuni immediately volunteers with full enthusiasm, but Barl quickly stops her. The reason is simple. Alucia is now the knight commander. She needs to stand back and observe the whole formation instead of rushing into the training ground like a former student who misses swinging a sword. Barl takes a wooden sword, faces Hemblitz and Karuni, and begins explaining, when fighting two people at the same time, the most important thing is to avoid being trapped between two attacking directions. A swordsman must keep moving, control his position, and force the opponents into a situation where they cannot coordinate easily. But the serious lesson does not last long, because a ball of magical light suddenly flies straight toward Barl and explodes right beside him. When the smoke clears, Lucy appears with a mischievous smile, cheerfully suggesting that everyone should move on to magic development, while Barl can only complain after being turned into a living test subject out of nowhere. He was teaching swordsmanship properly, and suddenly one of the kingdom's top mages came by to test his body durability. Seeing this, Alucia seriously calls Lucy outside for a private talk before the training yard can turn into a weapons testing site. Later that evening at Barl's house, he has just finished dinner and is sitting with Miui, the blue-haired girl he is currently taking care of. At first, the atmosphere is peaceful, but that peace quickly disappears when Lucy casually opens the door and walks in without permission, with Faisal following behind her, judging by the way Lucy enters. Barl's house almost feels like it no longer needs a lock. People he knows simply walk in before the owner can even invite them. Lucy quickly gets to the point and reveals that Faisal is currently teaching magical swordsmanship at the academy. But the problem is that Faisal's teaching skills are terrible. To put it bluntly, she is not good at teaching. The comment sounds harsh, but it does not seem unfair, because Faisal is a battle genius. She can perform the movements brilliantly, but explaining them clearly to other people is a completely different matter. At that moment, Miui immediately speaks up to defend her teacher, which makes Faisal confirm that Miui is indeed one of the students in the magical swordsmanship class. Lucy then continues teasing Miui, revealing that the reason she chose that class was because she admired Barl's swordsmanship. Hearing this, Miui instantly blushes in embarrassment, and Barl probably feels a little awkward too, because even though he keeps calling himself ordinary, students young and old continue to treat him like someone worth admiring. After the teasing, Lucy finally makes her request. She wants Barl to come to the academy and support the magical swordsmanship class. Barl immediately refuses because he cannot use magic, but Lucy and Faisal explain that he does not need to teach magic. He only needs to teach the swordsmanship part and help Faisal guide the students. The schedule is also flexible. Only once a week, Alucia has already agreed to lend him to the academy, and the pay is quite generous. Even though Barl feels like everyone has worked together to corner him, he does not reject the offer completely. He decides that for now, he will visit the class, observe the students and the situation. The scene then moves to a restaurant where Barl is having a meal with Alucia and Karuni. Alucia confirms that the Night Order has no objection to lending him to the academy. Barl also says they can stop by the school that afternoon to take a look, while Karuni remains very optimistic, believing that if Barl accepts, his reputation will rise even higher. But to Barl, an old man like him is no longer interested in chasing a little fame, and as he eats, Barl repeats that his position as special instructor was originally appointed by royal decree, so he still feels slightly unsure about whether it is acceptable for him to suddenly help Lucy at the academy. Alucia calmly reassures him that there is no problem, because Commander Lucy has already confirmed it. After that, the setting shifts to the Magic Academy. Barl walks down the hallway with Faisal and asks how many students are currently in the class. Faisal replies that there are only 5 students, which sounds rather modest, but she confidently says that everything will be fine if her master is there, making Barl quietly think that Faisal is just like Alucia and Serena, always placing far too many expectations on him, while in his own eyes, he is only an old man from the countryside who knows how to swing a sword. When he steps into the classroom, one female student immediately raises her hand and greets him with excitement, while the other 4 students, including Miui, react much more calmly. Barl can even feel suspicious eyes directed toward him, which is understandable, because a strange older man has suddenly appeared in their magical swordsmanship class and is being introduced as Miss Faisal's teacher. As for Miui, the feeling is slightly strange, since she sees Barl at home every day, but now she is seeing him standing in class as a teacher. Faisal quickly introduces Barl as the swordsmanship instructor and also as her own teacher, while Barl politely introduces himself as Barl Gardinant. He explains that Faisal and Headmaster Lucy asked him to observe the class, so the students should continue studying as usual. The lesson begins. Ficelle asks the students to open their books to page 12 and memorize the basic knowledge. At first, everything seems fine, until the orange-haired student Cindy asks about the concepts of inward rotation and outward rotation. Ficelle explains that outward rotation means rotating outward, while inward rotation means rotating inward. The answer is technically not wrong, but it does not help anyone understand anything better. The whole class is confused, and Barl, standing beside her, quietly mutters that he does not understand either. At this point, Lucy's earlier warning begins to prove itself. Ficelle may be strong, but her ability to explain things is clearly testing the students' patience. And it does not stop there. Ficelle then tells the whole class to take out their wooden swords and swing them 1,000 times, forcing Barl to panic and stop her immediately. The students estimate that 1,000 swings would take nearly 20 minutes, while Ficelle casually says that she used to do the same thing. After hearing that, Barl finally understands exactly why Lucy brought him here. Barl first asks each student to introduce themselves. One by one, they are Cindy Lovo, Lumite Bafang, Fredra Anek, Nessia Gand, and Miwi Freya. After that, he does not force anyone to swing 1,000 times and hurt their shoulders for no reason. Instead, he only asks each of them to swing the sword 5 times so he can observe their form, then carefully points out the mistakes each student is making and explains how to correct them. Watching Barl teach, Ficelle cannot help thinking that her master is truly the best, while Barl realizes that the students are improving quickly because they are willing to listen and adjust. That reminds him of the days when he used to teach at his countryside dojo, a feeling that is both familiar and pleasant. Cindy suddenly asks whether Barl is strong. Ficelle immediately answers for him and says that her master is very strong, but Nessia, the blonde male student, calmly says that they already know Ficelle is strong. Whether Barl is stronger than her still needs to be proven. In other words, if he wants their respect, he needs to show them with a fight. Barl understands that the children mean no harm. They simply want to know whether this unfamiliar old man truly has the ability to teach them. He also does not want to scare students with words alone. So he decides to invite Ficelle to the training field, and the whole group moves to the grass yard, where a clash between Barl's pure swordsmanship and Ficelle's magical swordsmanship is about to begin. On the grass field, Barl and Ficelle stand facing each other. After a brief bow, they immediately rush forward. But the match has barely started before the students freeze in place. The two of them are fighting so fast that the two boys can only gasp in shock. One blink is all it takes for the ability test to deliver its first answer. The real thing does not need much advertising. In that moment, Barl remembers Ficelle's past. She was once only an ordinary child, not someone born standing at the top, but she possessed a frightening level of hard work. Every day, she truly swung her sword 1,000 times. Ficelle mastered every sword technique Barl taught her, and even after reaching a very high level, she never stopped training. Then Ficelle decides to draw a real sword. The blade glows blue with magic, making the atmosphere of the practice match much more intense. This time, every slash she delivers is no longer simple swordsmanship, but carries the power of a magic sword. Barl continues defending and retreating, but in his heart, he rates his student very highly. She is no longer the little girl from the dojo. She has become a true warrior. However, her opponent is Barl, a man who can do absurd things while wearing the most ordinary expression. After defending for a while, he suddenly launches a lightning-fast strike that sends Ficelle down onto the grass. The match ends before the students can fully process what just happened. Barl gently praises Ficelle's technique, while Ficelle honestly admits defeat, not because she is weak, but because she did not expect her master to throw his sword. Barl wins with a very practical move. If the rules do not forbid it, then it is fair game. The students are immediately convinced, but they still cannot help wondering whether throwing a sword like that is acceptable. Barl uses that moment to teach them an important lesson. In real combat, the goal is not to perform beautiful sword techniques or follow textbook forms perfectly. The goal is to survive and win, and the same applies to magic swords. From their initial doubtful looks, the students' attitude gradually changes completely. They ask Barl in unison to continue teaching them. While Barl smiles deep down, he also wants to teach these children a little more, and at the same time, he wants Ficelle to understand that teaching is not simply making students repeat what she once did. Every person has a different pace, body, and way of learning, and a teacher must be able to observe those differences. That night, the story returns to Barl's house. He is eating dinner after a long day. While Miwi sits beside him, looking a little down as she asks whether he will accept the job at the academy, Miwi admits that she had wanted to wait until she became better before meeting Barl at school, because right now, she still cannot become as strong as him or Miss Ficelle. Hearing this, Barl gently encourages her and says that children improve very quickly, as long as she keeps working hard. One day, Miwi will find her own strength. But Miwi then asks a question that makes Barl pause. She asks whether he cannot become stronger anymore. Barrel immediately waves the question away and uses age as an excuse, like an adult hiding behind the word old whenever someone touches the truth. Mui pouts in dissatisfaction, while Barrel finishes his drink, asks her to wash the dishes, then sits alone in the quiet room. His expression slowly grows serious as he remembers his youth, a time when he too had always aimed for the very top. It turns out that he had not always been without ambition. After many years of quiet living, he had simply locked that ambition away in a very deep corner, somewhere else. Ficelle drinks tea in Lucy's room and admits that she lost to Barrel even after using a magic sword. Lucy is not surprised at all, because according to her, there are not many people who can defeat that man. When they talk about teaching, Ficelle believes that Barrel will accept because her master truly enjoys teaching, while Lucy advises her to learn from him, because if a person does not understand herself clearly, she cannot teach others. Standing at the front of a classroom is also a way to force oneself to keep improving. In the end, Lucy states that truly strong people never stop changing no matter their age, and those worthy of the title Sword Saint must also carry that responsibility. At the very next class in the Magic Academy, Barrel officially steps in to co-teach alongside Ficelle, but instead of handing everyone swords right away, he does something completely unexpected. He drags 5 students out to the field and makes them run endurance laps. The result is instant chaos. Most of the class ends up collapsed on the grass, completely drained. Only Cindy is still standing strong, her stamina clearly on another level. One student curiously asks Ficelle if she used to train like this back in the day. Ficelle calmly says yes, then casually suggests adding another 50 laps. Barrel immediately shuts that down before someone loses a kidney. He's not against running, but the workload has to make sense. Not everyone is built like Ficelle. Once the students understand the purpose behind the exercise, the complaints start to fade. They're still exhausted, but now they get it. Cindy even takes the initiative, handing out towels and reminding everyone that skipping breakfast is a terrible idea if they want to survive training. Watching quietly from the side, Barrel realizes something important. The problem with these students isn't just technique or stamina. Some of them still haven't truly connected with each other, and if a teacher only focuses on form while ignoring a student's mindset, they might end up teaching the wrong thing entirely. As they leave the training field, Barrel asks Ficelle if she's learned anything from the session. She bluntly replies that all she got from running was homesickness. At this point, turning a battle-hardened warrior like her into a proper teacher is clearly going to be a long journey. Barrel then explains the real value of magic swords. Magic allows long-range attacks, but the further the distance, the harder it is to control. If the flow of mana becomes unstable, the spell can collapse before it even hits the target. That's where the sword comes in. It acts as a conduit, helping stabilize and guide the magic while still allowing effective close combat. Right in the middle of their conversation, they run into Vice Principal Brown. Ficelle introduces Barrel as a swordsman personally invited by the headmaster, but Brown immediately shows clear disapproval. In his eyes, someone who doesn't specialize in magic has no place in a mage's environment. Magic, to him, is already complete. There's no need for outside interference. Back in his younger days, Brown and Lucy were key figures in the Magic Corps. Now that he's stepped away from the front lines to focus on research, his opinion carries serious weight. Barrel doesn't argue, but it's obvious now. This class isn't just struggling with low enrollment. It's going to have to prove that combining swordsmanship and magic actually matters. Meanwhile, somewhere else, Alucia and Serena head out for drinks, and peace was never an option. Serena immediately starts teasing Alucia, saying she's barely been away from Barrel and already looks like she's running on low oxygen. Then she takes it even further, hinting that Alucia abused her authority as commander just to keep her master close. Alucia instantly snaps back, denying everything and insisting it's all strictly professional. The argument escalates fast. Both of them proudly claim they're the one who truly cares about Barrel. After going back and forth for a while, they finally realize something. They both just want to repay their master. So they call a temporary truce and agree to work together, which lasts about 3 seconds because they immediately start fighting over who gets to pay the bill. Alucia flexes her status as the true disciple. Serena counters with her senior authority. At the end of the day, they can share responsibilities, but the title of favorite student, that's a battlefield. The next day in the cafeteria, the atmosphere is loud and lively, but in one quiet corner, Mui sits alone with a pitifully small meal. Cindy notices right away and walks over with her tray, sitting beside her. She gently reminds Mui that training is exhausting and eating properly is important. Not used to this kind of interaction, Mui awkwardly responds, and in her nervousness, she accidentally drops food onto her clothes. Instead of laughing, Cindy calmly wipes it off for her and reassures her with a warm smile. That small act of kindness cracks something inside Mui. Moments later, 3 other classmates casually pull up chairs and join them. No one pressures her, no one asks uncomfortable questions. They just talk and laugh like it's the most natural thing in the world. Slowly, Mui realizes something. She was never truly isolated, she just didn't know how to reach out. While the students grow closer, Barl is invited out to lunch by Kinera. Used to simple places, he walks into a fancy restaurant and immediately stiffens like he's being interrogated. Kinera tells him to relax. It's just a normal lunch between colleagues. It takes him a moment to remember his actual goal. He wants to ask about Miui's performance in other classes. Kinera explains that Miui is a strong student academically. She learns quickly and works hard. Her only weakness is a lack of confidence in communication. That confirms Barl's earlier observation. She's still hesitant, but she's starting to change. He doesn't need her to become outgoing overnight. Just taking one small step closer to others each day is already enough. When Barl asks what subject Kinera teaches, she says defensive magic, which is completely outside his expertise. Instead of explaining, she decides to demonstrate. She reaches out her hand, and Barl's brain immediately goes in the wrong direction. His face turns red as he panics at the thought of holding hands with a woman in public. But since he already started this, backing out now would be even more embarrassing. So he awkwardly takes her hand. Kinera instantly wraps it in a layer of blue mana and tells him to squeeze harder. The barrier flexes, absorbs the pressure, but doesn't break. She explains that its structure can change depending on the user's ability and intent. That's when Barl truly understands. Magic isn't just about attacking, it can be controlled with incredible precision for defense as well. And what he thought was a romantic moment was just a practical lesson. Back in the cafeteria, the students shift their discussion from magic basics to Barl himself. They admit his training helps them stay more alert, and his explanations are far clearer than most sword instructors they've had. When Cindy asks if Miui knows Barl, she immediately freezes. She admits she knows him, but doesn't know how to explain their relationship. Sensing her hesitation, Cindy suddenly brings up that her birthday is coming this weekend. Since her family is busy, she doesn't plan a big party. The group instantly suggests holding a small gathering at the academy. Everyone will bring food and gifts. Miui is surprised, but agrees. She even volunteers to prepare a gift. For the first time, she steps into a shared plan instead of watching from the outside. Before leaving, she quietly asks to keep the handkerchief Cindy used earlier. After lunch, Kinera expresses her expectations for Barl. She believes magic swords are a new field with huge potential. He's happy to hear that, but still feels the pressure, because in his own eyes, he's just a middle-aged swordsman who barely understands magic. At that moment, he notices the Sphene church nearby and decides to pay a visit. The bishop warmly greets him and immediately asks if Miui likes clothes, then hands him a box filled with dresses, admitting he doesn't understand modern taste, so he prepared multiple options. He sincerely thanks Barl for past help that allowed him to reach his current position. The gift isn't just kindness, it shows how strong Barl's connection with the church still is. But the mood quickly shifts when the conversation turns to Bishop Riveos, a major figure who violated a taboo and dragged both the church and royal family into a massive investigation. The fallout hit the Holy Knights directly. High-ranking officers were dismissed, Rose was forced to retire due to injuries, and those who remained are still cleaning up the aftermath. The bishop hints at an even bigger event coming soon, but leaves before explaining further. At the end of the day, Barl finds Miui carefully washing the handkerchief. He tells her to stop and go eat, but she insists on finishing first. It's clear how much that small act of kindness meant to her. The birthday party is held right at the academy. 5 students, along with Barl and Ficelle, gather around a table filled with food, gifts, and cake. Everyone is laughing, but Miui looks nervous, like she wants to say something. After gathering her courage, she softly calls Cindy's name, hands back the neatly washed handkerchief, and quietly wishes her a happy birthday. Her voice is small, but every word is clear. From a girl who once sat alone in silence, she finally reaches out and lets others into her world. The group immediately teases her for being too quiet. She shyly nudges one of them, and the entire table bursts into laughter. That warm atmosphere says everything. Miui is no longer on the outside, and that simple handkerchief becomes the most meaningful detail of the night. As things settle down, Cindy hopes more students will join the Magic Sword class next year. Others worry that if enrollment stays low, the class might be shut down. It's not confirmed yet, but the concern is real. Barl turns to Ficelle and asks why she never gave up on swordsmanship. She says she simply loves swinging a sword, but also, Barl's praise from years ago meant everything to her. In her memory, she once trained alone until exhaustion. Barl walked over, placed a hand on her head, and praised her effort. That one moment stayed with her for years, and now she realizes she's never given her own students that same encouragement. She only made them repeat what she endured, focusing on results and effort, but forgetting that students need recognition and a reason to keep going. That's the real lesson Barl wanted her to learn. Teaching isn't about forcing everyone down the same path. Each student is different. Some need lighter training, some need clearer explanations, some just need a single word of encouragement. Ficelle doesn't lack passion, she just hasn't learned how to pass it on. So Barl declares that from now on, he's placing his expectations on her as a teacher. Ficelle instantly jumps to her feet like she's been given a mission greater than battle itself. The students cheer, and in that moment, she truly begins to step into her role. But just as the party continues, the magic lights above suddenly flicker. The atmosphere shifts instantly. Barl and Ficelle rush outside and find a man supporting an injured older woman. He explains they were attacked, and worse, magic suddenly stopped working. Ficelle quickly tests a small flame on her fingertip. It works normally, which means mana hasn't disappeared completely. The phenomenon is selective, or triggered under unknown conditions. Before they can investigate further, Ficelle senses something approaching. A warning rings out, and suddenly, two black four-legged creatures with a purple glow crash into the academy grounds. They resemble hunting beasts, eyes glowing, moving so fast they leave only after images behind. Without hesitation, Barl steps forward, positioning himself between the threat and everyone behind him, a seasoned swordsman's instinct kicking in. The reason some teachers can't use magic is still unknown, but right now, at the front line, stands a man who never needed magic to begin with, and that might be exactly what this situation demands. The moment the four-legged creatures covered in black-purple smoke descend into the school courtyard, Barl steps in front of the injured students and draws his sword. One beast lunges directly at him, but his blade cuts through its body and reduces it to countless black particles. Ficelle eliminates another one nearby. Unfortunately, pairs of glowing white eyes immediately begin appearing across the academy walls and windows. Individual creatures can be destroyed, but they are emerging so quickly that standing outside and cutting them down one at a time will never solve the crisis. The entire pack charges at once. Chimera creates a blue barrier around the people behind her. The shield stops the first assault, but its surface continues shaking under the impact. She confirms that her magic still works, although some kind of power near the main building is weakening every spell. With Lucy absent, Barl divides their forces. Chimera and the other teachers will protect the wounded and defend the dormitories, while Barl and Ficelle enter the academy to locate the source. The two move through the darkened corridors, destroying every creature that emerges from the shadows. After observing the scattered remains, Ficelle notices that the black particles and tracks all seem to lead in the same direction. They eventually reach a door beside the staircase, an entrance normally restricted to senior staff. The passage beyond it may connect to an underground section of the academy. Barl tightens his grip on his sword and decides to descend. While the adults investigate, the 5 students from the Magic Sword class remain inside the Great Hall where the birthday celebration recently ended. A teacher enters to check on them, and after confirming that everyone is safe, orders them not to leave under any circumstances. Almost immediately after he departs, one of the creatures smashes through a window and leaps into the room. Mui, Cindy, Lumit, Fredra, and Nizia crawl beneath the banquet table, hiding behind the long tablecloth while holding their breath as claws and glowing white eyes move only a short distance away. The beast jumps onto the table and knocks down dishes, food, and Cindy's birthday presents. Mui quietly equips her weapons, several small blades attached to her fingers. When the creature temporarily moves away from their hiding place, the students whisper to one another. If it reaches the dormitories, the other children may be attacked before they even understand what is happening. Mui admits that she cannot defeat it alone. The other 4 have no intention of allowing her to fight by herself. If one person is not strong enough, then all 5 will work together. Mui channels mana into the 5 blades, causing them to glow at the same time. The movements Barl corrected during class have now become something the group can depend on. None of them knows whether the plan will succeed, but the girl who once isolated herself in the corner of the classroom is now the first to suggest standing and fighting. Her friends tighten their grips on their weapons and prepare to follow her. Beneath the academy, Barl and Ficelle discover a room filled with scattered books and research equipment. The injured man lying behind a bookshelf is Vice Principal Brown. Blood is flowing from his abdomen and soaking through his clothes. He reveals that the chamber was once protected by an extremely powerful seal. Believing that the secret behind Lucy's eternal youth was hidden beyond it, Brown spent many years attempting to break through, but every method ended in failure. Brown eventually created a magical device capable of neutralizing every form of magic. It allowed him to bypass the seal, but there was no immortality spell waiting on the other side. Once the protection was disabled, the shadow creatures began appearing. The same device is also responsible for weakening or completely suppressing magic throughout the academy. It is currently located inside a classroom on the first floor. Ficelle immediately takes responsibility for destroying it and carrying Brown to the teachers who can treat his injuries. Even while losing blood, Brown bitterly claims that if he had been younger and stronger, he would never have lost to those creatures. Before Ficelle carries him away, he tells them that neither she nor Barl could understand the terror of watching old age gradually steal a person's strength. Barl does not argue. He simply continues deeper underground alone. At the end of the tunnel lies an enormous chamber covered in glowing blue crystals. A gigantic beast stands in the center of the cavern, each of its 4 legs restrained by massive chains. Black-purple smoke continuously rises from its body, and its eyes shine through the darkness. Barl cannot yet confirm whether this creature is producing the smaller monsters, but its existence alone proves that the crisis is far from over. Barl initially assumes the chains will limit its movement. The beast immediately proves him wrong by charging forward, pulling every restraint tight, and sweeping its claws across the chamber. Barl avoids the attack, closes the distance, and slashes one of its front legs. The damaged section breaks apart into black smoke, only to gather together again moments later. The chains prevent it from leaving the cave, but they do nothing to stop it from attacking anything within reach. The creature pressures Barl with its jaws, claws, and massive weight. Whenever he retreats outside its striking range, it launches black projectiles from a distance, forcing him to deflect each volley with his sword. Fighting up close is dangerous, but maintaining distance is no safer. His attacks disperse the darkness only temporarily. Remembering that Miui and the other students are still above, Barl refuses to retreat. If the monster escapes its chains, the consequences will be impossible to contain. At the same time, Miui's group uses their short blades to apply the sword techniques they learned in class. When Fichel destroys the anti-magic device on the first floor, mana immediately returns throughout the academy. The 5 students shift into a coordinated magical assault. Light, ice, earth, wind, and fire strike the beast standing on the banquet table one after another. Some attacks are created by 2 students combining their power. Even after the entire sequence, however, the monster remains standing. The students realize that simply throwing many spells at the same target will not recreate Fichel's overwhelming power. Instead of panicking and running away, Miui studies the room, the unusual behavior of her own fire magic, and the objects still scattered around them. After a moment of thought, she announces that she has another plan. Underground, Barl is being forced entirely onto the defensive when a sword covered in blue magical energy suddenly cuts through the air. Fichel rushes in and drives the creature away from him. She confirms that Brown has been delivered for treatment and that the anti-magic device has been destroyed. With magic functioning again, Fichel strengthens her blade and repeatedly attacks the monster's head. She even covers the sword in flames, but every section she destroys quickly reforms from black smoke. Realizing that their current attacks cannot end the battle, Fichel decides to gather all of her mana into one decisive strike. The enhancement process will require time, so she asks Barl to protect her. He does not fully understand the mechanics, but immediately steps forward and places himself between his student and the monster. Barl deliberately shouts to attract its attention. Behind him, Fichel holds her sword upright as golden light slowly surrounds her entire body. Barl continues avoiding claws, deflecting projectiles, and maintaining his position until she completes the preparation. The dark power connected to Lono Ambrosia continues threatening the Great Hall. The students need only a brief opening to carry out Miui's plan. One magical sword attack pins the creature's front leg against the floor. 2 students immediately use mana to pull the large tablecloth over its entire body, and Miui ignites the fabric at the exact moment they planned. Miui's fire magic has a weakness. Flames fired directly through the air disappear very quickly. Once they ignite a physical object such as the tablecloth, however, they continue burning. That supposedly inconvenient characteristic becomes the key to the plan. Fire spreads across the cloth and temporarily surrounds Lono. The students retreat and begin cheering, believing they succeeded. Yet the danger has only been restrained, not destroyed. The flames have not eliminated the source of power hidden inside the creature. Lono quickly breaks free from the fire and drags the battle back into a darkness resembling the underground cavern. Barl moves forward to fight beside Fichel. Each slash from his sword breaks sections of the shadowy body into fragments, but they reform almost immediately. The enemy constantly changes its methods of attack. At one moment, it uses claws and fangs at close range. At the next, it produces spikes, tentacles, and shadow beasts that attack from several directions. Barl can no longer rely entirely on conventional swordsmanship. He blocks a direct charge and twists aside as black spikes burst from the ground. The nearly uninterrupted sequence of attacks causes his breathing to grow heavier. His clothes are torn, and pain begins spreading through his body. After escaping one strike by the narrowest possible margin, Barl plants his sword against the floor to remain standing and admits that he nearly died. This is not an act intended to deceive the enemy. His body has genuinely reached its limit and no longer recovers as quickly as it did in his youth. Even so, Barl rises again and continues drawing every attack toward himself. When the golden light reaches its limit, Fichel raises her sword and releases Cortana. A gigantic slash of light sweeps across the entire chamber and destroys Lono's enormous bestial form. The black smoke is erased completely. However, once the light fades, a dark core remains floating in the air. Fichel immediately senses that something is wrong. Darkness begins spreading from the core as it attempts to construct another body. Cortana destroyed the monster's outer form, but failed to eliminate the life source at its center. Hearing his student's warning, Barl draws his sword, charges forward, and cuts directly through the core. The strike divides it into 2 halves, causing all the gathering darkness to disappear. Fichel's overwhelming power exposed the crucial weakness, while Barl used the single available moment to prevent its resurrection. Once they confirm that the dangerous presence has vanished, Fichel examines the 2 halves of the core. Barl praises his student for performing exceptionally well. She responds by calling him the grand title recently given to him by the commander. Embarrassed, Barl says that an old man like him does not deserve such an impressive name. He jokingly remarks that Fichel says it so naturally because she must secretly like the title. She immediately turns red and presses directly against one of his injuries. After a battle that nearly killed them, the tension finally begins to fade. Inside the scorched Great Hall, the 5 students sit among overturned tables and broken chairs. The others praise Miui's tablecloth plan for creating an important opportunity. She explains that her flames quickly disappear when fired through empty air, but continue burning once they attach themselves to a physical object. The group also remembers Ficel's lesson that combat requires using everything available, including weapons, terrain, and even objects that appear completely unrelated. Cindy thanks Mui for helping her during the crisis. Mui looks slightly embarrassed but replies that helping was only natural because they are friends. She once sat apart from the entire class. Now she has created a plan, fought beside the others, and naturally considers them part of her world. After exchanging a few playful remarks, the group begins cleaning together before unanimously complaining that the battle has left them starving. The following day, the magic sword class resumes training in the courtyard. Ficelle no longer orders everyone to repeat the exact same movement thousands of times. Instead, she visits each student individually, corrects their hand placement, adjusts their posture, and explains the reason behind each mistake. When they improve, she also makes the effort to praise them. Miui and her classmates assist one another. The recent crisis did not tear the class apart. It made its 5 members closer than before. From the window of Lucy's office, Barl and the headmistress watch the training session together. Both recognize how much Ficelle, Miui, and the other students have changed. Ficelle now understands that a teacher must notice the differences between individual students. The real battle also taught the children the strength created through trust and coordination. The small magic sword class is finally beginning to prove its value through the growth of its students. Barl then asks Lucy what kind of creature was hidden beneath the academy. She confirms that its name was Lono Ambrosia, a monster she once sealed away for research. Lucy knows that concealing such a dangerous existence directly beneath the school was irresponsible, but she could not find another solution. Even she had been unable to damage Lono's core. Hearing that, Barl silently opens his bag and places the 2 severed halves of the black core on her desk. Lucy's calm expression immediately disappears. The object she could never damage has been cut cleanly into 2 pieces by Barl. He then asks about Brown's condition. Lucy explains that the vice principal is recovering through healing magic, but he cannot easily escape responsibility. Breaking the seal and activating the anti-magic device endangered the entire academy. His exact punishment will be decided later. Lucy is furious that Brown became obsessed with the secret of eternal youth and with surpassing her. Yet as she remembers their shared past, her voice gradually becomes quieter. Brown once worked genuinely hard to improve. That determination allowed him to stand beside Lucy as one of the 2 main pillars of the magic course. Unfortunately, the man who once earned such recognition eventually allowed his fear of aging to distort his path. Her words remind Barl of Brown's claim that young people cannot understand the experience of losing their strength with every passing year. Brown was wrong about one thing. Barl understands that fear far better than he realizes. The battle with Lono made every heavy breath, every painful movement, and every near-fatal mistake remind him that he is no longer the young swordsman he once was. Barl knows that one day his hands will no longer possess enough strength to hold a sword. A time will come when he must place it down himself, even if he still wants to continue. Understanding Brown's fear does not mean accepting his choices. It only forces Barl to confront the question he has avoided for years. When the day comes that he can no longer live as a true swordsman, what will he become? His reflection in the office window overlaps with his aging face, while the answer remains beyond his reach.